el doctor Robert Hale Montgomery, working at the World Bank to end extreme poverty and promote shared prosperity in a sustainable way in the Americas. Va a dar una conferencia sobre trabajando en el Banco Mundial para acabar la pobreza extrema y promover la prosperidad compartida de manera sostenible en las Américas. Bob, the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. Good morning, o para mí, buenas tardes desde España. Hoy voy a presentar en inglés, pero estoy totalmente dispuesto más tarde para aclarar cualquier cosa en español. First of all, I would just like to take this opportunity to sincerely thank the Pan American Academy of Engineering for being selected as a member and given this opportunity to present today. It really, truly is an honor, and I would like to express a special thanks to Reggie Vachon, Mike Sanyo, and Jorge Vanegas for this opportunity. So, a key to poverty reduction and shared prosperity in infrastructure development is economic development, is infrastructure development, as it's a key driver for economic development. However, as we all know, countries, states, and municipalities have limited fiscal and natural resources. We have natural events such as climate change, and society is demanding for more efficient projects and more benefits. Thus, there is this tremendous need for sustainable infrastructure. So based on well over 20 years working at the World Bank and at the Inter-American Development Bank, where I had the great opportunity to be involved in literally hundreds of public and private sector infrastructure projects, the vast majority being in Latin America and Caribbean, I wanted to today briefly talk about one key topic, the absolute need for developing sustainable infrastructure, and present, at least from my perspective, some key practical points. The main point really is we can do infrastructure development better, and it is very important to understand these practical measures that can help us do that. So first of all, I want to just make sure we put things into context, because many of these words have different meanings to different people. By sustainable, I'm talking about environment, social, worker community health and safety, and core labor. By infrastructure, I'm talking about infrastructure at the project level. I'm talking about, especially in Latin America, a range of project size and sectors. And it's important because some of the points I'll present later, you'll see the applicability will depend a lot on the project size or sector. And of course, both public and private. And then third, development, a focus here on Latin America and the Caribbean, and both on design, construct, and operate. And again, I want to emphasize what I'm going to present today is practical points. Now you're going to look at some of these, and maybe most of them, and say, boy, that's common sense. And you're right. However, I don't think we can ever have too much common sense. And one of the things that I have learned is that practical points are often the keys to success. So with that, the first one, we obviously in projects must comply with the regulatory and legal requirements, and those would include those from financial investors or institutions. But we also must adequately mitigate the negative project impacts. This is a requirement. However, it is clear that compliance by itself does not imply project sustainability and does not necessarily imply sound management. Next slide. Therefore, to get to project sustainability, we've come across sort of three main areas. The first is, how do you comply and mitigate those impacts in a way that's more sustainable? How can we do it to generate less impacts? How can we maybe use less resources? How can we use better equipment or materials? Second, and very important, is how can we go beyond the negative side? How can we enhance positive impacts and benefits within the framework of the project? And a third one that sort of is an intermixing issue is, how do we better manage the financial risks and opportunities? Opportunities we define as how can we reduce costs or increase profits related to these factors of environment, social health, safety, and labor. And before I move on, one point to remember, I'm not going to talk about one key factor is what project. When we think about sustainability, before we determine how to do it, we have to determine what project. And that's another key aspect of sustainability, but that's something that's dealt with in the planning process or alternative analysis and so forth. Next slide. So this slide just presents the fact that there are a variety of ways that we can make infrastructure projects more sustainable in terms of using less or better materials, energy, water. This concept of risk mitigation hierarchy, where we first prevent, then we minimize, then we mitigate. This is really seen a lot in this concept of prevention through design that's used extensively in the worker health and safety area. As I mentioned before, generating positive benefits. On the social side, classically we've looked at local employment, pushes of goods and services, but now we're moving to how we can better train people so that they actually develop opportunities post-project, that they'll have skills and capacities that will allow them to be more sustainable. Mechanisms to return or share benefits to local populations. This is something that's very important for extractive or enclave projects where the project benefits basically are received in areas outside of the project location. This is typical for oil and gas development, mining projects, and oftentimes many energy generation facilities, such as power plants. Enhanced stakeholder participation. This is moving way beyond the idea of consultation and talking about levels of stakeholder collaboration and empowerment. And of course, finally, is beyond the project. How can we maybe use the project to maybe influence laws, regulations, best practices, or other projects? Next slide, please. So, one of the first points is we as engineers and scientists must better proactively mainstream our work and results into the other technical areas within infrastructure project development. In particular, this relates to procurement, finance, legal, and policy. And two key areas. One is sustainable procurement. This really is a key aspect. And unfortunately, it's been a weak area in terms of infrastructure projects. We've seen a lot of sustainable procurement related to goods and services, but it's really been quite limited and not done very well when it comes to infrastructure. We as specialists, we must get involved with the procurement and work with our procurement specialists. And this means a lot more than just giving them the technical design documents. This means understanding how they work, what do they need, providing that input, proactively participating in the bid, contracting, and contract management processes. The second is this financial risk and opportunity management. In other words, working with those financiers or economists. Clearly, environment can cause risks, and we need to understand those risks and translate those into costs. But we also know that sustainability can actually reduce costs, which makes projects more profitable or makes resources available for other activities within a governmental framework. Thus, we must better understand the project financial structure and its framework. In other words, we all must learn a little bit about finance. Second, we must take an active role in identifying and managing these financial risks that relate to environment, social, and health and safety. And we need to learn how to communicate that to those other people in a way that they can understand, which typically means putting in economic terms, or at least putting in some way to allow comparisons. And finally, within the broader context, we all need to better communicate to our colleagues. It's very easy to speak engineer to engineer, but when engineers talk to procurement people, you need to understand their language. You need to understand what the information they need, not what you need, and how do they need it, and present it. Otherwise, it's not very effective in terms of mainstreaming and promoting sustainability. Next slide. Another one, and a sort of a pet peeve of mine, is everyone has a role in promoting sustainability, regardless of your defined or legal responsibility in the project. And be honest, this is very relevant when we work with government entities or ministries and certain private companies. They view that they only have to deal with what's their responsibility. And if the one thing we've learned for sustainability, it's a caveat, it's a catch-all of everything. And we really need everybody to be thinking of solutions, ideas. That doesn't mean you're responsible. That doesn't mean you have to do it. That doesn't mean you have to pay for it. But we all need to be thinking about that. And one of the ways I've often told people how to think about it is what we call the mirror test. Basically, at the end of a project involvement, when you look at yourself in the mirror, can you say that you did enough to promote sustainability within that project? Next slide, please. Another key area that's become very relevant now within the concepts of sustainability is adaptive management. And when we look at it into sustainability, first of all, we need to remember that it's never too late to improve the project's sustainability. Obviously, during the design phase, it is the best time to do it, and we can do the best job incorporating sustainability. But there's our opportunities during construction and operation, and we should never forget that. Second, we need to understand that in infrastructure projects during construction and operation, things happen. Changes in scope, timing, could be events, worker health and safety, whatever. Secondly, we have monitoring, and the monitoring provides useful information on project performance, including sustainability. Thus, we need to acknowledge this information, we need to react to it, and we need to evolve to adapt and improve the sustainability outcomes that we're looking for. And this includes the sustainability tools themselves. The reality is this is a state of art that's moving quite rapidly. So what we're using today may change, and we have made different tools in 3 years from now. And therefore, with the project, we need to adapt to those new tools. Next slide, please. Management plans. You know, these are things such as environmental or health and safety management plans, the construction or operational manuals and plans. First of all, obviously they need to be effective, but we need to go back to thinking about efficiency. And I say this, and this is a problem we oftentimes see with regulatory agencies, and I'll be very honest, with international financial institutions such as the World Bank and IDB. For example, the size. Recently, I had an opportunity to look at an environmental management plan for a project that involved the construction of small civil works. 450 pages. This is not efficient. It doesn't help the specialists understand how do we improve sustainability and so forth. The second is we need to evolve and adapt. Plans should not be static. We should think more of the concepts of management systems that are constantly evolving and feel comfortable that as we need to, based on performance or results, we can adapt those plans. And finally, don't forget, the goal is project results in terms of sustainability or mitigation of impacts. It's not the plan itself, or it's not just implementing the plan. And oftentimes, many regulatory agencies and developmental financial institutions get stuck on the goal being the plan and not the results from the plan. Next slide. Knowledge transfer. One of the things I spent the last several years on is basically a major challenge to sustainable infrastructure development in low and middle income countries, and in particular is the lack of full capacity related on how to do sustainable infrastructure development. You know, we've gone from decision makers not wanting to do sustainability to now they want it, but the reality is many of our specialists are not fully capable of actually doing it. They just don't know how to do it. The good is there's an extensive and ever expanding amount of information, and we'll only get more with time. The bad is it's become extremely hard to efficiently find the relevant information or the right training. There's just so much out there. Now, while most of the information, including materials and equipment, has been developed in higher income countries, it really is important that we adapt those methods, materials, executive to reflect the characteristics of low and middle income countries or lax conditions. And finally, and this is another major issue for me, is cost. The reality is much of the technical information we generate now and training is very expensive or basically prohibitive to a large percentage of technical specialists in lack. We need to promote mechanisms and tools to provide that information and training for free or basically at a minimum cost. Otherwise, we, as the technical specialists at universities and other institutions, are doing nothing to really promote that knowledge transfer to the low and middle income countries, which, let's be face it, that's 80% or more of the world's population.
2 minutes, Bob.
Next slide. Yeah, I'm just about finished. Mindset. We must focus our thinking on how we can make sustainability in projects and not why we cannot. And I want to say this is very concerning to me. When I sit in a room with people who are developing sustainable manuals and so forth, and I'll say this, again, being very frank, very typical for many of my US colleagues, and very typical oftentimes from lawyers. You know, they say, this isn't in the law. Oh, this is risky, and we might, we might suffer some reputational issue. Or, oh, this isn't my responsibility. Or, oh, this is social and not environmental. We really need to drop that mindset. There's nothing worse to have people say, we are talking about why we can't do it and why we should or how we can. And the final slide is we as engineers need to start thinking about a little bit of a occupation. We need to be salespersons. We need to understand what motivates decision makers. We need to have a range of benefits that come from sustainability and why is it good, and understand what's going to motivate a decision maker to do it. We need to package it for the user and not for us. Oftentimes we have as engineers or scientists talks about, the number of new environmental green space. Well, that doesn't mean a whole lot maybe to a minister of transport. You have to put it in their terms. And you need to be proactive and persistent. Proactive and persistent. Proactive and persistent. That's part of being and promoting sustainability. So with that, I'd like to close, and I would just summarize that basically, while it takes effort and perseverance from specialists like you and me, we can make a difference and make infrastructure development in Latin America and Caribbean better by being more sustainable. Muchas gracias and thank you.
Thank you. That was perfect. So, a todos los panelistas, son las 11:49 y deberíamos haber terminado a las 11:50, así que estamos perfectamente dentro del tiempo. Gracias a todos. Y en este momento abro la posibilidad de que si alguien tiene alguna pregunta, la pueda hacer a través del chat, o si alguien quiere hacer un comentario, me pide el favor de quitar el micrófono y decirlo. Quiero hacer solamente unas pequeñas observaciones. Hemos visto una amplia variedad en la perspectiva de lo que es una vida en ingeniería. Y si tuviéramos más tiempo, estoy seguro que el ingeniero Yarola nos podría entretener por mucho tiempo con todas las anécdotas que tiene y ha vivido. Y lo mismo Pablo, lo mismo Gonzalo, lo mismo Reginald, que son los expresidentes de la academia. Yo me siento muy honrado de unirme a este grupo, que han sido gigantes para mí. Pero yo creo que para todos ha habido un llamado a la acción, un llamado al compromiso, un llamado a la gratitud, un llamado hacia la nueva era que nos espera después de esta pandemia global. Así que abro el foro para cualquier persona que quiera decir algo. Reggie, would you like to mention anything? You are muted.
that was an outstanding session. And one of the requirements for induction into the Academy is, in fact, presentations by the new members and the members and participation in the activities of the Academy. And it gives me great hope and courage and enthusiasm that the presentations we have heard indicate that our new members will be vibrant participants in the Academy, and we welcome them with open arms as colleagues.
¿Alguien se quiere lanzar? Si hay algún estudiante, si hay algún profesional, si hay alguien de cualquier lado, tenemos una amplia participación. Tenemos 54 participantes y estoy seguro que alguien quiere hablar. Y si no, yo sigo hablando. Pablo, ¿quieres hablar un poquito más?
Aló.
Listo.
Sí, sí. No.
Buenas tardes a toda la audiencia del tiempo del este para atrás. Saludos a Puerto Rico. Saludos a los Estados Unidos. Greetings to Puerto Rico, United States and Canada, and to the countries of Argentina and Brazil. They are ahead of us in the time frame. It is a great honor to be in this 20th celebration of the Academy and having outstanding presentations from the newcomers to the Academy. The Academy will continue being a very important one with the new members as we receive the presentations today. I want to salute to all my colleagues, wishing that COVID be a past in the next year and get together in a reunion that tomorrow the board of directors will decide where and when. But overall, I want to thank Dr. Bachon, our present president, for his leadership, his vision, and his interest to maintain the Academy of Engineers in Pan America as an institution with independent thinking, with action together, and overall with unity among all the academicians that make a rich environment and a contribution to the Las Americas countries. Thank you for inviting me again, and it will be an honor to continue working throughout the years. In behalf of my family, in behalf of Janet and myself, we are together along with you in the present and future of the Academy. Wish you the best to all our ladies engineers and to our colleagues in all the countries. Kind regards to Presidente Yadarola, kind regards to President Gonzalo Jimenez, kind regards to President Bachon, and kind regards to President Jorge Vanegas. May the Lord bless you all. Thank you.
Gracias, Pablo. Entonces, si no hay más preguntas o comentarios... perdón, hay una pregunta de Jorge Quiroz. Jorge, ¿quieres hablar la pregunta, por favor? Es una pregunta para el último ponente.
Sí, con mucho gusto. Muy interesante la exposición. Lamentablemente para nosotros, digamos, a nivel de país, siempre se nos complican las cosas, particularmente cuando estamos trabajando con instituciones financieras internacionales, entre los requisitos, digamos, financieros y los requisitos de sostenibilidad. Siempre se forman las discusiones entre los presupuestos y lo que es la realidad de las propuestas, particularmente si se enfocan temas de sostenibilidad que en algunos casos tienden a ser un poco más costosos. Entonces, mi pregunta específica es si esa mentalidad en las instituciones financieras internacionales se está reenfocando más hacia la sostenibilidad y un poco menos hacia, digamos, los dólares y centavos.
Bob? Bob, are you still online?
Sí, sí. Bueno, muy buena pregunta. Primero, como yo dije en mi presentación, los requisitos de los bancos internacionales, de bancos de desarrollo, a veces sí, son un poco duros y a veces no son exactamente, tienen mucha eficiencia. Pero yo creo que sobre la parte de sostenibilidad, primero tiene que definir en qué contexto, porque a veces hay sostenibilidad financiera, hay sostenibilidad ambiental, pero la parte clave es normalmente un proyecto sostenible debería ser mejor de un proyecto que no es sostenible. Entonces, un problema que hemos visto muchas veces es que no estamos mostrando o no estamos identificando los beneficios de sostenibilidad para mostrar la importancia de tener o los requisitos de sostenibilidad. Y es en particularmente sobre la parte ambiental, muchas veces, otra vez, el problema es que tenemos beneficios, pero no está expresado en términos de dólares, por ejemplo. Entonces, a veces gente dice, bueno, voy a pagar $10 más, pero voy a tener 10 hectáreas verdes. Esta comparación es muy complicado, entonces tenemos que tratar de mostrar el valor de los dos. Pero, no sé, creo que su punto es clave, pero otra vez quiere repetir que en teoría un proyecto sostenible debería estar mejor de cualquier proyecto que no es sostenible.
Gracias, Bob. Ya vamos a pasar a un receso de 1 hora, donde todos los participantes, si quieren, pueden dejar la computadora prendida.
Jorge, I want to make some comments. This is Ben Colucci.
Oh, okay, Colucci, go ahead. You have 2 minutes.
Okay. I want to congratulate all the members of the society, particularly this first panel. And if you may, I want also to personally recognize Professor Kumar Sinha, who was my advisor, my mentor, and my second father in 1978, almost 42 years ago, that he has been my inspiration to be in the transportation engineering field. Therefore, congratulations to everyone, and I hope that we can continue working together. And outstanding first panel. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jorge, for our outstanding organization, and also to President Bashon, and also incoming President, also Jose Domingo Perez. Thank you to everyone.